If you are thinking about purchasing or offloading real estate in Florida at this exact moment, I need to share something with you that could protect you from losing your entire life savings. What I am about to expose is not speculation. This is happening right now. And by the time this video ends, you will understand precisely what actions to take before it is too late. Write in the comments, "Protect my Florida investment," if you care about safeguarding your family's financial future in the Sunshine State. The Florida real estate scene has descended into a state of absolute chaos I have never witnessed in my entire career. We are not discussing a simple correction. We are witnessing a complete market meltdown. And the terrifying part, most property owners have absolutely no clue why this is genuinely happening, or what catastrophe awaits them next. At this precise second, nearly 520,000 homes valued at over $180 billion are stuck in absolute limbo. These are not properties that could not find buyers. These are active transactions. Families who finalized agreements months ago, who are now trapped in a nightmare they never anticipated. And in mere days on January 12th, everything could shift in ways that will either rescue your wealth or obliterate it completely. Before we continue any further, if you want to stay ahead of every critical development in Florida property, every concealed opportunity, and every danger the mainstream outlets refuse to discuss, make certain you hit subscribe and activate notifications. What I am going to reveal could represent the gap between executing the smartest real estate move of your existence or the most disastrous financial error you will ever commit. Let me paint the picture of what is genuinely occurring on the ground. And I mean right now, today, this very week. Real estate professionals across Florida are documenting the identical bizarre phenomenon. Property showings are still taking place, but something has fundamentally changed. Potential buyers are touring through condos and homes, appearing interested, asking every appropriate question, and then vanishing completely. No proposals, no continuation, just absolute radio silence. When agents eventually reach these buyers by phone, they all repeat the identical phrase, "We are holding off." Holding off for what exactly? Holding off for January 12th. The statistics validate this in a manner that should absolutely petrify anyone with Florida property on the market at this moment. Buyer interest has plummeted by 52% compared to last year. Sales contracts are down 41%. Now, you might be reasoning, 41% sounds catastrophic, but maybe temporary. But here is what makes this genuinely chilling. This represents the steepest annual drop in fresh sales contracts Florida has witnessed in 4 complete years. 4 years of explosive recovery. 4 years of the marketplace healing from pandemic devastation and attracting record numbers of new residents. And abruptly, it all freezes solid. But there is something even more disturbing happening beneath the surface. The seasonal deceleration that typically begins in late January has materialized 10 to 12 weeks prematurely. Properties that would normally be generating bidding wars right now are sitting completely dormant. Transaction chains that should be advancing rapidly are disintegrating overnight. Somebody in the center of every chain is abandoning the deal. And they are all doing it for the identical reason. Stay with me, because in just a moment, I am going to reveal why David Beckham is desperately trying to offload 3 Miami properties before January 12th, and what that means for your investment. Now, I understand what you are thinking. People always become anxious before major legislative announcements. This is just typical pre-session nervousness, correct? Absolutely wrong. What is transpiring right now is entirely different. This is not anxiety. This is a calculated strategic freeze by hundreds of thousands of Floridians who have heard the whispers emerging from Tallahassee. And trust me, these are not merely whispers. Let me describe what is genuinely being discussed behind locked doors in the state capitol. And I want you to visualize just for one moment that you are among the families currently purchasing a Florida home or condo. You initiated this entire process 6 months ago. Time, ones. You have invested tens of thousands for inspections, for attorneys, for mortgage preparations. You have terminated your lease up north. Your belongings are packed. You are days away from closing. And then you awaken on January 13th and discover that overnight Tallahassee has tacked on catastrophic insurance requirements and brutal new taxes to your purchase. Not because you made any mistake, not because the marketplace shifted, but because of legislative decisions you had zero control over. This is the nightmare confronting hundreds of thousands of Florida families at this exact moment. And the proposals being circulated in Tallahassee are not minor adjustments. They represent radical restructuring of how property ownership functions in this state. Do not click away now, because what I am about to share next involves actual documented cases of billionaires who have already lost tens of millions in Florida real estate, and the insurance crisis that is about to get exponentially worse. Here is the first bombshell that could detonate. There is legitimate discussion about imposing a mandatory hurricane preparedness assessment on all coastal properties valued above $600,000. Let that information settle for a moment. Instead of optional insurance upgrades, you would be legally required to pay annual assessments that could reach $15,000 to $20,000 per year. The assessment would escalate proportionally based on property location and valuation. So someone in a modest beachfront condo might pay $8,000 yearly, but someone in a luxury Miami Beach penthouse could be staring at bills reaching into $50,000 every single year. Now, on the surface, this might sound somewhat reasonable given Florida's hurricane exposure. Insure properties can withstand storms and protect the state's emergency funds. But here is what they are deliberately not revealing to you. This would utterly devastate property owners in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, Naples, and every coastal community. In those regions, a completely average 2-bedroom condo routinely exceeds $600,000. We are not discussing oceanfront mansions. We are discussing normal condos where normal retirees live. Suddenly, these households would be paying mandatory assessment bills every year for the remainder of their lives on top of skyrocketing insurance premiums. But it deteriorates significantly. Much worse. There is an insurance mandate being circulated that has wealthy Florida property owners legitimately panicking and fleeing the state. Right now, if you cannot secure affordable property insurance in Florida, you can go without it at your own risk or use the state-backed insurer of last resort. It has operated this way for years. It represents one of the reasons people could still afford Florida coastal property, despite rising insurance costs. But the rumors indicate this flexibility is under serious threat. The proposal circulating around Tallahassee would mandate full replacement cost insurance on all properties valued above $1.2 million, with no exceptions permitted. Consider what this actually means. Someone who owns a waterfront home in Sarasota, purchased 15 years ago for $700,000, could now be sitting on a $2.8 million asset. Not because they renovated extensively, not because they improved it dramatically, simply because they bought in the correct location before prices exploded. Under this fresh mandate, they would be legally required to carry full insurance that could cost $60,000 to $90,000 annually. And if they cannot afford it or cannot find a carrier willing to write the policy, they would be forced to sell. Sources close to Miami real estate circles insist that Lionel Messi is paying over $140,000 monthly, just in insurance premiums across his Florida properties. Jeff Bezos reportedly abandoned plans to purchase additional Miami Beach real estate after discovering what is coming in January. David Beckham is desperately attempting to offload 3 South Beach investment properties at 30% losses before the new rules take effect. These are not rumors. This is happening to the wealthiest individuals in Florida right now. And if you think you are immune because you are not a billionaire athlete or tech mogul, think again. The justification from Tallahassee sounds perfectly reasonable on paper. Florida taxpayers should not subsidize risky coastal development. Property owners in hurricane zones should bear the full cost of their location choices. But the reality is, this punishes hundreds of thousands of homeowners who purchased decades ago when insurance was affordable and hurricanes were less frequent. They did not cause climate change. They did not create the insurance crisis. They simply lived in their homes, while the risk landscape transformed catastrophically around them. Keep watching, because in less than 2 minutes, I am going to expose the condo collapse crisis that has Miami developers in absolute panic, and why it could wipe out 50% of condo values overnight. And there is a third proposal that is making real estate investors genuinely consider whether Florida is even investable anymore. Reports indicate the state legislature is exploring an 18% occupancy levy on all short-term rental income statewide. Right now, short-term rental owners pay regular income assessment on their rental profits after expenses, but this specialized levy has never existed in Florida. This modification would fundamentally transform the economics of owning vacation rentals and investment properties across the entire state. Small-scale investors, the variety of individuals who own 1 or 2 condos as Airbnb investments or vacation rentals, are already operating on impossibly thin margins after recent regulatory crackdowns. Local governments restricting short-term rentals, add an 18% occupancy levy on top, and enormous numbers of them will simply liquidate and abandon the Florida market entirely. They will sell at losses, flood the market with inventory, and crash condo values across every coastal city. The cruel irony here: tourists and winter visitors would face dramatically higher accommodation costs from a policy supposedly designed to regulate the industry more fairly. Now, here is the part that should make every single Florida property owner sit up and pay absolute attention. Some of this has already transpired. We have already witnessed precisely what Tallahassee does when they announce property-related modifications. And the pattern is absolutely terrifying. Back on September 1st of this year, condo inspection requirements changed dramatically across the entire state following new safety legislation. Before that date, older condos could defer major structural inspections indefinitely as long as no obvious problems appeared. Overnight, buildings over 30 years old were required to complete comprehensive milestone inspections within strict deadlines. A condo association that delayed inspections suddenly faced mandatory assessments of $20,000 to $50,000 per unit to fund required repairs. For retirees on fixed incomes who thought they owned their homes outright, this was absolutely devastating. But here is what truly reveals everything. Tallahassee announced this modification with minimal advance warning. They rushed it through after the Surfside collapse created political pressure. And what transpired? August condo sales collapsed by 68% compared to the previous August. Buyers fled the condo market entirely. Sellers panicked and slashed prices desperately. Condo associations drowned in special assessment notices and angry owner meetings. It was a market implosion created entirely by poorly planned legislation. Then September arrived, and the nightmare intensified. Condo transactions remained frozen. Lenders refused to finance purchases in buildings without completed inspections. It was predictable, catastrophic, and entirely self-inflicted by rushed policymaking. And now, with the January legislative session approaching, we are observing the exact identical pattern unfold in real time. Buyers who would normally transact in January or February are withdrawing completely, waiting to see what fresh costs and requirements might be imposed. Sellers who desperately need to relocate or liquidate are stuck, unable to generate any serious interest because everyone is too terrified to commit. But here is where the narrative becomes genuinely fascinating. While the marketplace is frozen statewide, what is occurring across different regions is absolutely revealing and exposes something crucial about what is approaching next. Do not skip ahead, because what I am about to reveal next shows exactly which Florida markets are about to get completely destroyed, and which ones might survive with only moderate damage. Down in Naples and southwest Florida, luxury home prices have actually risen by 8% over the past year despite the chaos. Some gated communities are witnessing growth of 12% or more. Ultra-wealthy buyers from the Northeast are still relocating and willing to pay premium prices for hurricane-resistant new construction. The Panhandle is witnessing similar resilience in specific areas. Parts of Jacksonville and Northeast Florida are holding steady. But Miami is hemorrhaging value at an alarming rate. Annual condo price growth in Miami-Dade County has reversed into negative 7%, with some neighborhoods showing double-digit declines. The average Miami condo is now valued around $670,000. But that figure masks enormous variation and genuine panic. Brickell and South Beach luxury towers remain astronomically expensive, propped up by international money and celebrity buyers. But mid-range buildings and anything requiring major assessments are collapsing in value. Tampa Bay condo values are down 11%. Fort Lauderdale is down 9%. The insurance crisis has made waterfront condos virtually unsellable in some areas. And this is where the proposed legislative changes become truly sinister. When Tallahassee discusses targeting coastal properties above $600,000, they are not creating an assessment on the wealthy. They are creating an assessment on geography and lifestyle. They are punishing property owners whose only mistake was buying a home near the water in a state that marketed itself as a coastal paradise. According to marketplace data, approximately 42% of the Florida coastal property market sits above $600,000, but the distribution is wildly uneven. In Miami-Dade and Broward counties, a massive proportion of condos and homes exceed that threshold. In Palm Beach County and Naples, ordinary 2- and 3-bedroom condos routinely hit or surpass that figure. Meanwhile, in Central Florida, away from the coast, $600,000 purchases you something genuinely impressive with zero hurricane risk. So, when you hear about these proposed mandatory assessments, understand what they genuinely mean. A retiree in Orlando living in a beautiful golf course home valued at $500,000 pays nothing extra. A retiree in a Delray Beach condo valued at $700,000 suddenly confronts $15,000 in annual mandatory assessments plus insurance that has tripled in cost. Same retirement income, same type of property. Completely different financial burden based purely on location. Ivanka Trump reportedly has 2 Miami penthouses listed at 40% below purchase price and still cannot find qualified buyers willing to assume the insurance burden. Tom Brady allegedly walked away from a Tampa Bay waterfront development deal at the last second when his advisors calculated the true cost of ownership under coming regulations. If this is happening to celebrities with unlimited resources and the best financial advisors money can buy, what chance do you have? The speculation around homeowners association fee explosions adds yet another layer of uncertainty that is keeping buyers completely frozen. Florida's condo association system is facing an existential crisis. Buildings constructed during the development boom of the 80s and 90s are now reaching the age where major systems need replacement. A building that charged $500 monthly in HOA fees last year might be announcing $3,000 monthly fees this year to fund desperately needed repairs. The financial shock is destroying retirees who planned their budgets around stable housing costs. Reports indicate some condo associations are discussing special assessments reaching $100,000 per unit or more to fund structural repairs mandated by new inspection requirements. Owners who cannot afford these assessments face impossible choices. Pay the assessment and deplete retirement savings. Sell at massive losses into a flooded market. Or face potential foreclosure and liens on their properties. For elderly owners on fixed incomes, these are literally life-destroying decisions. Investors, meanwhile, are confronting what can only be described as a perfect storm of horrible timing. Over the past several years, Florida marketed itself as a low-tax, business-friendly paradise for real estate investment. Buyers flooded in from high-tax states. Developers constructed thousands of new condos and homes. Prices soared to record levels. Now the entire narrative is reversing catastrophically. Insurance costs have increased by 890% in some coastal areas over just 18 months. Property taxes are rising as local governments struggle with infrastructure costs. HOA fees are exploding across the condo market. New construction has slowed dramatically as developers realize buyers cannot afford current prices plus the insurance burden. The cumulative effect is that real estate investors are abandoning Florida in massive waves. These are not speculators or flippers. They are sophisticated investors who carefully analyzed Florida's fundamentals and decided the risk-reward no longer makes sense. When they liquidate and exit the marketplace, property values decline further. Local economies dependent on real estate activity suffer. The negative feedback loop accelerates. Stay with me, because in the next 60 seconds, I am going to walk you through the two exact scenarios that will unfold after January 12th, and which one will either save your financial future or destroy it completely. So, what transpires next? Everything depends on what Tallahassee announces on January 12th when the new legislative session begins. And I want you to comprehend the two possible scenarios because they lead to completely different outcomes. Scenario 1. Aggressive intervention. If Tallahassee introduces the radical insurance mandates and mandatory coastal assessments, the marketplace experiences a shockwave that makes September look mild. Buyers withdraw from transactions en masse. Sellers slash asking prices by 30 to 50%, desperately trying to find any buyer. Those 520,000 properties stuck in the pipeline face mass cancellations as buyers refuse to close under the new cost structure. Real estate professionals see their businesses collapse overnight. The construction industry grinds to a halt as no one wants to build in a crashing market. Tourism suffers as vacation rental inventory floods the sales market instead. The economic ripple effects devastate Florida's economy far beyond just real estate. Scenario 2. Moderate reforms. If Tallahassee announces phased implementation of reforms with reasonable transition periods and caps on assessment increases, the marketplace might stabilize after an initial adjustment. The accumulated demand from months of buyers sitting on the sidelines returns gradually. Sellers adjust expectations and price realistically for the new cost environment. Transactions resume at lower volumes, but with healthier fundamentals. Confidence returns slowly but steadily. Market forecasters are genuinely split on what transpires next. Optimists predict Florida home prices will finish the year down 3 to 8%, with gradual stabilization into 2026 as the insurance market adjusts. They point to Florida's strong population growth, favorable tax environment, and underlying demand from retiring baby boomers. Pessimists are far more dire in their predictions. They warn that the insurance crisis is fundamentally unsolvable without federal intervention. They predict coastal property values could decline 40 to 60% over the next 3 years as the true cost of climate risk gets priced into the market. They forecast mass abandonment of older condos as assessment costs exceed property values. They see a future where coastal Florida becomes affordable only to the ultra-wealthy who can self-insure, while middle-class buyers flee to inland areas or leave the state entirely. The truth is probably somewhere between these scenarios, but closer to the pessimistic end. Florida real estate faces genuine structural problems that cannot be solved with minor policy adjustments. Insurance companies are not returning to the state without massive premium increases or government subsidies. Climate change is making hurricanes more frequent and more damaging. Sea level rise is a slow-moving but inevitable threat to coastal development. Aging condo infrastructure requires hundreds of billions in repairs that current owners cannot afford. If Tallahassee imposes harsh new requirements without providing financial assistance or reasonable transition periods, they risk triggering a cascade of foreclosures, bankruptcies, and property abandonments that could devastate the state economy. Here is what frustrates me most about this entire situation. The problems are real and serious. Florida genuinely needs insurance reform and better building standards. But rushing through poorly designed legislation in response to political pressure creates more problems than it solves. If Tallahassee would simply develop comprehensive reform plans with input from property owners, insurance experts, and real estate professionals, with generous transition periods and financial assistance for those who need it, the marketplace could adapt gradually. Property owners could make informed long-term decisions. Buyers could evaluate purchases with clear information about future costs. Sellers could price realistically based on known factors, rather than fear and speculation. Instead, we have panic and uncertainty, leaked proposals, and rushed legislation, creating an environment where nobody knows what is approaching, and everyone is too terrified to act. Property transactions are major life decisions requiring substantial financial commitments. When state government undermines confidence by constantly threatening dramatic rule changes with minimal notice, they paralyze the marketplace and damage the broader economy. The most likely outcome from the January legislative session is harsh reality without adequate support. Tallahassee will probably implement stricter insurance requirements and new assessment mechanisms because the current system is unsustainable. But they will provide inadequate financial assistance and insufficient transition time because state budgets are constrained. Expect pain rather than relief. New mandatory insurance coverage levels that many cannot afford. Coastal property assessments that burden middle-class owners. Accelerated condo inspection timelines that trigger special assessment crises. But probably not the absolute worst-case scenarios, because complete market collapse would devastate state tax revenues and create political backlash. So what should you actually do right now in this environment? Let me give you specific actionable guidance based on your situation. If you are in the middle of a coastal condo transaction, seriously consider walking away unless you have thoroughly investigated the building's structural condition, upcoming assessment schedule, and true insurance costs. The risk of getting trapped in a rapidly depreciating asset with exploding costs is extremely high. If you are just starting to search for Florida property and you are not under extreme time pressure, waiting until after January 12th is absolutely essential. The legislative session will provide clarity on what costs and requirements you will actually face. 2 weeks of patience could save you from a financially ruinous decision. If you are selling Florida property, understand that you are competing against massive inventory and panicked sellers. Price aggressively below comparable listings if you genuinely need to sell. The market has shifted entirely to favor buyers who have numerous options and can wait indefinitely. Your property will not appreciate while you wait for your ideal price. It will depreciate as conditions worsen. If you currently own Florida coastal property, immediately investigate your insurance situation and potential assessment liabilities. Do not wait for official notices. Contact your condo association. Review building inspection reports. Get multiple insurance quotes now before new mandates take effect. Understand what you might be required to pay so you can make informed decisions about whether to stay or sell. If you are considering Florida as an investment, recognize that the easy money period is completely over. Florida real estate will not appreciate rapidly like it did from 2020 to 2022. The next several years will be about risk management and avoiding catastrophic losses, not generating impressive returns. Only invest if you can afford worst-case scenarios, including major assessment costs and insurance premium increases. But here is the bigger picture that everyone needs to comprehend about Florida's situation. This crisis reveals something fundamental about climate risk and coastal development. For decades, Florida sold itself as an affordable coastal paradise where anyone could retire near the beach. That dream is ending. The true cost of living in hurricane-prone coastal areas is finally being recognized and priced into the market. Florida will not disappear or become uninhabitable. But it will become increasingly expensive to own coastal property as insurance and maintenance costs reflect actual risk levels. Wealthy buyers who can afford these costs will continue purchasing. Middle-class families will increasingly move inland or to other states entirely. The economic and social geography of Florida will transform over the next decade. Other coastal states are watching Florida's crisis with deep concern because they face similar challenges. How do you maintain affordable coastal housing when insurance costs are exploding? How do you fund infrastructure maintenance when tax bases are eroding as middle-class residents flee? How do you balance property rights with public safety when buildings are genuinely dangerous, but owners cannot afford repairs? Florida is the canary in the coal mine for climate-related real estate disruption. What happens here over the next few years will shape policy debates and investment decisions across every coastal state in America. What is missing from the entire debate is honest acknowledgement of the trade-offs involved. Do we want to preserve affordable coastal living, even if that requires taxpayer subsidies for insurance and disaster recovery? Do we want to let the market price risk accurately, even if that makes coastal property accessible only to the wealthy? Do we want strict building standards and mandatory insurance, even if that bankrupts current owners who bought under different rules? Do we want to restrict coastal development going forward, even if that crashes existing property values? These are genuine dilemmas, with no easy answers. But making policy through crisis response and rushed legislation without comprehensive planning is the worst possible approach. The freeze in the Florida property marketplace right now is a symptom of deeper structural problems. It is a symptom of climate change, making coastal living increasingly risky and expensive. It is a symptom of insurance markets that cannot function profitably under current conditions. It is a symptom of aging infrastructure built to standards that are no longer adequate. It is a symptom of state government that lacks the resources to solve problems of this magnitude. It is a symptom of property owners trapped between unaffordable costs and unsellable assets. On January 12th, Tallahassee will reveal their legislative priorities for the new session. The property marketplace will react within hours. If the approach is moderate with reasonable transition periods and financial assistance, the market might stabilize at lower price levels. Transactions will resume. Buyers will return with adjusted expectations. Sellers will accept the new reality and price accordingly. But if the approach is harsh mandates without adequate support, The crisis could spiral into genuine catastrophe. Prices could collapse 50 to 70% in vulnerable markets. Transaction volumes could drop 80% or more. That pipeline worth over $180 billion could evaporate as deals collapse and buyers flee. Foreclosures would spike. Banks would suffer massive losses on real estate portfolios. The economic damage would extend far beyond real estate into every sector of Florida's economy. So, where does that leave us right now? Today? At this exact moment? The Florida property marketplace is frozen, in absolute terror. Not because of normal economic cycles, not because people do not want Florida property, but because of existential uncertainty about the future cost of ownership. Buyers are paralyzed waiting to see what requirements they will face. Sellers are desperate, but cannot find qualified buyers willing to assume the risks. Property owners are calculating whether they can afford to stay or must sell at losses. Everyone is watching Tallahassee, hoping for solutions, but expecting more problems. This is not how a healthy property marketplace functions. This is not how responsible governance addresses complex challenges. And it is ordinary families who saved for years to buy their Florida dream home, retirees who relocated here for their golden years, small investors who trusted in Florida's economic story who are paying the devastating price for this chaos. January 12th will bring clarity of some kind. But the fundamental question is whether Florida's political leadership will rise to the challenge with comprehensive solutions or continue crisis management that makes everything worse. The Florida property marketplace is holding its breath in absolute dread. In just days, we will discover if there is any path forward or if this is the beginning of a generational catastrophe. And that is where you come in, because knowledge and preparation are your only defense in uncertain times. If this video helped you understand what is genuinely happening in the Florida property marketplace and what you must do to protect yourself, make certain you subscribe to this channel immediately. We are going to be covering every single development from the January 12th legislative session, breaking down exactly what each policy means for your specific situation, and giving you the actionable guidance you desperately need to make intelligent decisions in this crisis. Do not leave your financial future and your family's security to chance. Hit that subscribe button right now. Smash the like button if this information opened your eyes to the danger you're facing. And share this video urgently with every Florida property owner you know who needs to hear this truth before it is too late. Your wealth and your retirement depend entirely on the decisions you make in the next 2 weeks. Make them count before the window closes forever.